San Francisco, it's Rex Broadcasting Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez.
Are you ready? Let's get it on!
How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling, and I can guarantee that this 2 hours is going to go by way too fast. We have way too much for 2 hours. Anyway, we're going to be talking at probably about 8:45 Eastern Time to Mike Tenay and Larry Matisic, and we will be running down the Hall of Fame ballot, and we're also going to have Conan up, most likely, towards the end of the show, and talk about the various wrestlers from Mexico in the Hall of Fame ballot, and get his perspective on that. And, of course, you're going to get mine and Brian's as well, although you've gotten that before. And so because of that, we're going to start taking phone calls early, right after this break, as a matter of fact. Brian, how are you today?
I'm doing good.
A couple of things to talk about before we start as far as current news. There will be a press conference on Tuesday with WWE in Los Angeles, which will be to announce the Triple H versus Bill Goldberg match for SummerSlam. They have made up their mind, and that's the way they're going, and maybe they'll announce some other matches on that show as well. So that's what's going on there. And there's also going to be a press conference within a couple of hours by Pride, where I am presuming they will announce Igor Vovchanchin against Mirko Cro Cop, as well as a very interesting match with Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira against Rico Rodriguez. So you got the Pride versus UFC match. In fact, you have the most recently deposed World Heavyweight Champion from each organization. Of course, Nogueira recently losing to Fedor Emelianenko, Fedor, whatever. And, of course, Rodriguez recently losing to Tim Sylvia. And just interesting that we now have on that show, the August 10th Pride show, you now have two UFC stars with Chuck Liddell and Rico Rodriguez on the show.
That's right.
Yeah.
Going back to the WWF thing real quick, it's kind of strange to hear they're going to have a press conference to announce a match that has never even been talked about on TV.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'm the only one.
How about, we're going to be talking about, we're going to have some gambling lines later. Actually, we should talk about real gambling, such as what are the odds that that match actually takes place with neither of the two being injured between now and SummerSlam?
Very low.
Okay. Well, that's the real odds of wrestling, not so much who's going to win and lose, is it?
I think that they would both crawl into the ring. So I guess the question would be more who is going to get injured and the severity.
Okay. Hunter's not hurt. Hunter's hurting pretty good right now. Hey, they both are. What am I saying?
And you will witness that firsthand tonight.
That's right. In just a couple of hours, Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Bill Goldberg wrestle for the first time ever, and it's the HP Pavilion in San Jose. And immediately after the show, I'm going to be rushing down there. So I'll be seeing the match, and we'll have a report up on the website late tonight. So, yeah, we'll have a lot on that later, won't we? Anyway, we're going to go head to a break right now. We're going to come back with phone calls right after this. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. We're here every Sunday night for 2 hours, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 to 7 Pacific Time, taking your phone calls, and we'll be getting to our guests in our Hall of Fame show in a little bit. And we're going to start first with Jeff in New York City. Jeff, how are you today?
Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a couple questions. First one is on Kurt Angle.
Yes.
I've heard a rumor, I think that there was a torch about he's getting a big head similar to Brock Lesnar was discussed a few months ago that he got a big head, and, an ego, that is. And I was wondering what's
Kurt Angle's always had an ego. I mean, he had it, listen, hey, he had it in college because you better have it in college when you're a, 198-pound guy wrestling heavyweights and win.
He enough that it would cause problems.
What? I mean, Kurt, the management wants Kurt Angle to be a management guy in the dressing room, and he is becoming that. So if that's what they're referring to, then that's happening.
Is that a good thing, do you think?
If you're management, yes. Some of the wrestlers may not think so. I don't know. I would say not a good thing.
He hasn't paid his dues enough to be management.
Wow. All right. My other question is about the X Division. I watch a lot of matches from ROH and the X Division and NWA TNA, and they all do a lot of good moves. But I wonder, in 10 years, are they going to be able to do half of these moves I mean, where's it? I mean, they're good matches, but I mean, I'd rather see something more something with psychology. Where do you think wrestling?
Okay, well, here's the problem: is that when you have, I'll just give an example: Amazing Red. A guy like that cannot get over unless he does the stuff similar to what he does. Now, a 210-pound guy or a 250-pound guy, can certainly get over doing more psychology-oriented matches. But small guys, if you want a small guy to wrestle like a big guy, then the small guys just simply aren't going to get over. I mean, no matter what you tell them, and WWE has that problem in that they want the small guys to wrestle like big guys. But, that's what opened the business up to the small guys was doing the crazy moves. Now, in the long run, is that good for you? No, they're all going to break down because of it, but it's never been it's always been a business about big guys up until in the United States, the last 10 years or so. So that's what opened it up to them. So to ask them to work like big guys, I don't think it will work for them. Brian, do you have any ideas on that?
I think another problem is that they have to do, like, the high-risk stuff, but there is a limit. And I just watched some of the X Division matches, and I can almost see that it's going to become numbing to the people that are watching at home.
It already is when you do it too much.
Yeah,
you have to pick and choose when to do it, not just go out there and do a million things. That will never work.
Yeah, little guys can use psychology in their matches, but they have to.
But they can't. I don't think they can use the identical moves as the big guys.
Well, it's the psychology built around the high flying that they do.
Right.
It's not just going out and doing 750,000 high flying moves, because by the end of the match you've forgotten every single one of them, you've killed yourself, and you've numbed the audience, and that's bad.
So to me, the style would be like what Rey Mysterio Jr. does now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And my last quick question is, where do you think Chuck Liddell? How do you think Chuck Liddell is going to fare in the upcoming Grand Prix tournament?
Oh, that is so hard. I don't know how anyone's going to fare there because any one of those don't you think pretty much, with the exception of probably Kiyoshi Tamura, and maybe Sakuraba, anyone can win that's in there if they just have the right night and the right luck and it's their day. And I think Chuck is one of those who can win.
I would even say Tamura. I would give him.
Oh, that would be so hard for him to beat three guys. I could see him win. Put it this way, I could see him winning any match he's in. Although it would be tough. It would be tough. Everyone would be tough.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember when Tamura wrestled or fought Vanderlei Silva, and Vanderlei won, but Tamura gave him a very competitive fight.
Yeah.
And if I kept thinking that if Tamura realized how well he matched up with Vanderlei and wasn't so scared going in, that he might have won that match, or he certainly would have had a good shot because he heard Vanderlei standing. He was afraid to strike with him, but then when he struck with him, he did pretty darn well, and Vanderlei wanted to take him down because of his great middle kicks.
Yeah.
So, Chuck Liddell has a chance to win the whole thing, but I can't even begin to predict what's going to happen there. With Alistair Overeem, I think one's going to knock out the other, and I just think it's the one who gets the punch in first.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Okay. Let's go to Ron in Milford, Connecticut. Ron, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, Brian, how are you tonight?
Doing good.
A couple of topics. First, I was reading my Observer a few weeks ago on the salary structures on the WWE, and I couldn't believe that the wrestlers still have to pay their road expenses.
Yes, they still do.
And I'm wondering, it's probably fodder for a column later on, but what exactly would it cost the WWE to cover all those road expenses, and what do you think it would do for the morale of the wrestlers if they did?
Well, Vince would have to take a pay cut in his bonuses.
And that's not happening right now because it's a buyer's market. What's funny is in the 80s, that when they would go on tour, that they had to pay their own flight back home?
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, one time that, the guys all stood up and just go, you should at least, they all got together. And it's like one of the few times they ever got together and go, you should at least be paying our flight home. And the office, in fact, did, from that point forward, pay their flights home. But what it will take is everybody going in there.
Was there a point where if it had to be so close, you had to drive? Didn't they do that at one point?
Well, they have rules as far as how many miles you fly or drive. I don't know if they're set exactly, but it's right around the 500-mile mark, I think. But if everybody in the dressing room got together and just said, hey, we really should have our road expenses paid, and they had a big, and everyone stuck firm, they would get them paid. But if it doesn't happen, it won't happen, and they haven't stuck firm on anything in about 15 years.
Another thing to consider is that they could say something like, okay, listen, we will put you up in the cheapest hotel in the entire city, and we will give you $5 a day for food,
Yeah, but that's not any. No. You have to like all sports, with the exception of wrestling, they have like certain rules. Like you get a certain amount of meal money, you get a certain, they put people up at very nice hotels, And I mean,
I'm just telling you what I see happening. It would be something like that.
No, that would have to be negotiated in because I think that
hotel they could get that.
Yeah, that would have to be negotiated in anyway.
Do they have anything now with the company stock or stock options?
The wrestlers don't. I mean, a lot of the wrestlers do have company stock, but they had to buy it themselves.
Oh.
Some of the management got stock options, though, I think. I know a lot of the upper management people have a lot of stock. Some of them have sold a lot of stock, too.
Yeah. To switch around, on the one thing they haven't quite messed up yet, because they haven't come up with it, is the idea of an interpromotional pay-per-view. Do they have anything like that in the works?
Not that I'm aware of, but obviously it's going to happen at some point.
I
don't think it's going to be this big of a deal right now because they've never really. I don't think they've gotten the brand separated.
Big deal at all at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think you would add one extra buy.
Yeah,
I think they could plan it out a year in advance.
Well, if they build anything up for a year, by the time the year gets there, it should be a big deal.
It would be completely different.
Yeah, that's true. They'll change it 15 times in that year anyway, and then everyone will be confused by the time they got there.
Well, I had the idea to have an 8-match show, and your steps would be that the loser of each match has to go to the other organization.
Interesting.
Which would leave a lot of plot lines open. Maybe have a tournament with each show to pick the 8 or 10 guys who are going to the pay-per-view. And then you'll have your subplot lines where maybe one guy who's in a tournament has another guy who doesn't like him, who wants him to lose, and try to get rid of him.
That's it. Yeah, you could do an interesting show like that.
And then to balance it out, you can have things like a double countout or a double DQ.
Oh, you don't want that. No, you don't want that.
Well, maybe in one match.
Yeah, you could do it in one match. But it better not be the last match on the show. We've seen how that happens, and that doesn't work very well anymore.
No, I think they could set it up with a 1-hour special in prime time the month before. Maybe have like a lottery pick once each show has its 8 or 10 wrestlers. You have to decide who's going to fight who.
Oh, okay.
Set up an angle.
Yeah, I mean it's viable.
A network show to set up an angle.
No, they've got their own. They've got 4 hours to fill each week. They could use that, I think.
Yeah, they could do that.
They do have those specials they're supposed to get though.
That they never have. So what does it matter?
Well, the point is it's not the worst idea.
No, I know. But
they actually utilized. I always like when we get callers that have better ideas than the actual writing crew.
It doesn't happen all that infrequently.
It's the potential.
In fact, on some ideas, we rarely have callers that have a worse idea, like the invasion.
That's right.
I don't think we ever had one caller with a worse idea for invasion than the one that ended up happening.
Yep.
And they couldn't mess it up. But what you want is a second WrestleMania.
Yeah. Well, they got one if you look at the buy rate of the first one. So evidently that was an angle that could not be messed up once. Okay, but it could be messed up twice because they didn't get a second one out of it.
Yep.
I was wondering also why were you still so. You still seem so down on the split promotion idea.
Oh, just because it's meant nothing, and because business is in the toilet, and aside from that, I'm not down on it at all.
So save from 4 hours.
Okay, we got to go to John. Okay.
Okay, take it easy, Dave.
All right, you're very welcome. John, what's up?
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Dave, after seeing the Kane fire angle, I've decided to totally quit on WWE.
The Kane thing on. Sorry. For some reason, we have a technical problem. We're going to go to a break right now. We're going to come back right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. And if you're looking for information on either of those publications, you can go to www.wrestlingobserver.com. There's info on the latest issue of the Wrestling Observer with tons of information as far as a lot of backstage stuff going on in WWE. And this coming week's issue will be part 5 of the history of wrestling. And this will cover the early 1990s. And I just wrote it earlier this week. And just tons of stuff. So if you're really into like 1990, 1991, this is kind of the history of what was going on then with WWF and WCW in the second full year of their feud. And Figure 4. What are you getting Figure 4 this week?
I was actually distracted. I can hear people talking in the background.
Oh, okay.
Figure 4 this coming week or this past week?
Either one, because I did not get my issue yesterday, and I actually had time to read it, so I'm going to get it Monday and have to rush through it.
Well, this past week I did a breakdown of Ohio Valley, kind of as For anybody maybe in WWE that never watched the show, which would be everybody, kind of explaining who everybody is.
I did that one remember when I did that one?
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't help.
Yeah, I know. It's a failure, but I figure at least the readers will know, so they can have a good laugh with us guys on TV.
That we watch every week on TV. Isn't it like the funniest thing to watch the Basham brothers, who are like so good on OVW, and they're like so absolutely nothing when you watch them on SmackDown, and they're the exact same two guys?
Well, I made that exact comment. It's like I can imagine people watching them on SmackDown who don't see Ohio Valley and reading our newsletters and going, what in the hell are Brian and Dave talking about? These two guys are so boring. They obviously can't cut a promo. And, we watch them every week and they're great.
I know.
It seems impossible to believe, but they do it.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go back to John. But anyway, you can go to www.wrestlingobserver.com. We're going to go back to John in Chicago. John, what's going on?
Yeah, thanks for staying with me, Dave.
Okay.
All right. As I was saying, I'm totally done with the WWE right now because that fire angle it wasn't even shocking anymore. It wasn't anything like the necrophilia. It's just so stupid. Now the stupidity level of their booking staff has really gone through the roof now.
Yeah.
And it's just to me, this is what I look at it right now. Who cares if this press conference is going to, announce Triple H and Goldberg? I know in August Triple H will lay down for Goldberg, but he'll get the win back again. Goldberg, they'll probably try to get some pay-per-view matches out of him, but he's not there for the long term. And they're booking. I was talking to some of my friends on this. When their contract comes up with Viacom in 2005, I don't see a future for them in cable, in syndication.
It's too soon to really read what's going to happen in 2005.
But this is the thing I'm wondering about.
Even though we're only a couple years away. But
yeah, I understand. But it's like, their major source of revenue is TV and pay-per-view right now, and I guess merchandise.
More TV and pay-per-view than merchandise.
Right.
A lot more. Merchandise is not. House shows are even ahead of merchandise.
Okay, your ratings are going downward.
They're actually stable now. They're way down from their peak.
Right.
But they really haven't declined any since
But you still have
last year.
You still have content that drives the high-end advertisers away.
And always will, as long as these people are running the show.
Right. And my thinking is if there's a new regime, with that
a new regime. That's pie in the sky.
I'm talking that runs TNN or UPN.
Uh-huh.
Wouldn't they look at it and say, I'd rather have the Shield or Monk or something like that on rather than this.
Well, all that stuff could happen at any time.
Yeah. That can happen. That's what happened on TNT.
Right.
Realistically, WCW didn't.
Probably more money now.
Yeah, WCW did not get taken off the air for bad ratings. Even though the ratings were down from the peak, they got taken off the air because the new program director didn't like wrestling. And
you also have to consider that at any time there could be a new program director coming into any station and going, how come Raw and SmackDown are always the highest rated show on the network or whatever, and we don't have wrestling? We have Stripperella or whatever.
Okay, but we haven't had that program director, have we?
We couldn't, but I'm saying it.
But it could happen tomorrow. It could happen tomorrow. That's right.
You know what? Their programming so far, the accessory programming to Raw and all that, it has been bombing basically.
This new stuff. Yeah. Well, the TNN TNN really hasn't done well with a lot of stuff that they've spent a lot of money for.
Right. Because you look at TNT. TNT just runs basically Law and Order reruns and sometimes original movies. And I sometimes see them in like the top 5 as far as basic cable networks.
Yeah, they're doing fine. They're doing good actually.
And you don't have that thing. And look at USA.
USA is doing fine without wrestling.
Yeah. So I'm just, it's just. To me, it just seems like, are they going to wake up at all? Are they in such fantasy land?
Yes.
I swear to God,
Yes, they are.
This is Vince's way. His programming is the way. He doesn't go to a psychiatrist. He does his programming to get his therapy done.
That's funny that Sean Assail sort of wrote something like that at the end of his book. That's what we watch on Raw and SmackDown.
I mean, what do you see? What do you see, Dave? I mean, to me, just looking at this one angle, Triple H and Goldberg. To me, it would be better if Triple H actually faced Kane in a tweener role. Kane as being the tweener, because, to me,
don't say that, because Triple H may decide that's a good idea.
I mean, do you think? What do you see by the end of the year? Do you?
I don't even see August. I know. I'm waiting for vengeance. I don't think past that.
I just feel sad that it's going to be like, in 2 years, that I really don't think we'll see television on free TV or cable TV.
I actually think that there will be something. I don't know what it will be. I'm just
going to follow you guys.
I do believe that but you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen in September 2005. But I don't see them being off of all television for good. I just don't see that one happening.
Well, I'll still be following you guys and on the internet, because you guys actually, the commentary you guys put on Figure 4 Weekly and the Observer issues are more entertaining than their shows right now.
Well, thanks very much, but I don't take that as big a compliment as some people would. Anyway.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dave.
Okay, you're very welcome. We're going to go to Chris at Olympic Sports. Chris, what's going on?
How you doing, Dave?
Doing really good.
Oh, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Yeah, I've been reading your newsletter for about the last 6 months.
Oh, thanks very much.
I love it. You're also been in a lot of newspapers. You used to be in a Rochester Democrat and Chronicle with Bob Matthews talking about you all the time.
Oh, back in the 80s, especially. Yeah, Bob Matthews. I did his show a couple of times, and he was actually the first real sports writer to cover the Observer.
And wrestling is huge in Western New York.
It's huge everywhere when it's done right.
The problem. The problem with SmackDown is Paul E. does not get to do anything with the shows anymore.
That hasn't helped. That's for sure.
I think he's probably the brightest mind in wrestling right now.
I think Hunter is, but I don't know. But maybe not though. If he's going to screw up the company.
Yeah, it's
inherit a screwed up company.
Yeah, it's right now what wrestling basically needs, they need a second company to get up big.
Yep.
I think NWA TNA could be there.
NWA TNA, if everything fell right, has a chance, but from what I've seen, to me they need like 6 out of every 8 shows have to be good, and they're really not hitting that ratio right now.
Well, the problem is we got Vince Russo cutting 20-minute promos that are completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
That doesn't help the show at all.
Yep, you're right about that. Well, let us know about what's the story with the odds and things like that.
Okay, what we're doing is actually tomorrow night we got the matchup of Chris Jericho versus Shawn Michaels. With basically Shawn Michaels is -120, Chris Jericho -110.
So it's actually almost a pick'em.
It's almost a pick'em match.
Yeah.
And what we do is we let you you're allowed to bet in a match, $50 limit. We want the casual fan and the internet wrestling fan to come in, bet wrestling, and bet every other sport that we offer.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we also offer NWA TNA on Wednesday night, and every WWE pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
And one of
you
the
offer betting on TNA?
Yeah.
Wow. I look at the booking, and sometimes I'm like, what if you have a match with 2 guys, and like a guy that's not even in the match ends up winning?
Well, it's a no action then.
Okay. Everything's like thrown out then.
Yeah, it's in the disclaimer that both say there's a double DQ and there's no winner announced and there's no action on the match.
Okay.
What we also do is, like for tomorrow night, I haven't put it up yet, is which wrestler will hit their signature move first. Will Jericho get the Lion Tamer on Michaels first, or the Sweet Chin Music will it hit Jericho first?
Oh, who gets the first? That's an interesting concept.
And we like that one, and what we're looking.
How about if what Linda McMahon will do?
No, nothing on that yet.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't know. With her, you never know which way they're going to go with that on that sport.
How about will Linda McMahon give a stirring performance?
She'll have that out there. She's frozen. Who's more frozen, her or Ted Williams?
Oh God. Oh, poor Vince. Even when we try not to knock his family, it just keeps happening.
Yeah,
they're public.
I know.
What happened with wrestling was when he became the sole proprietor of everything, sole monopoly.
Yep.
He basically doesn't give any, doesn't care anymore.
I think he cares. I think that he especially cares about being a big star, though.
Yeah, he's basically booking himself.
Yeah. So who's going to win between Zach Gowen and Vince McMahon on Sunday?
Well, you know Zach Gowen's going to win that match.
Okay.
We're not going to put. I mean, what we're looking.
You know that.
Huh? I don't know that. I just don't. I don't.
Uh-oh. You know what's bad is, like, he's thinking logically, and now you're trying to put odds by thinking logically on people who aren't thinking logically.
Right. It's very difficult.
Yeah. I bet it is.
I mean, you know, one of the matches I'm looking at was John Cena, who I'm a big mark for, against Undertaker. There's no way Cena's going to win that match. I can't.
Actually, I think he might. But if he does, it's like going to be
fluke.
Yeah, it'll be like with 15 guys interfering. I mean, put it this way: John Cena will not get over in that match. I would bet a lot on that one.
I mean, you look at Cena's a very good performer.
Great talker. I saw something on him on Confidential last night. I mean, he just comes off like such a star.
I mean, and if they actually play their cards right with this kid, they got a major star.
Yeah, especially because he's the only one that connects with teenagers. I know because we have a teenager at the house, and his favorite wrestler is John Cena, and he just cracks up every time the guy's on.
But the problem is Vince. I mean, he did the smartest thing I probably saw on SmackDown. They didn't push Billy Gunn to the finals, thank God.
Well, yes, that's true. Okay, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, what's your pick?
Ooh, Eddie Guerrero, we're going to put that actually at minus 115. It's going to be a pick-em match.
Really? Okay.
And we're actually going to have who's going to hit the move first. Will Eddie hit the frog splash or Benoit with the crossface crippler? Okay.
We're going to go ahead to a break right now. We're going to come back and talk about a couple more of the matches going on for the next week. And right after this, you listen to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. We're here with Chris from Olympic Sports. We're also going to have Mike Tenay and Larry Matisic up talking about the Hall of Fame in just a couple of minutes. Chris, I guess we should go through some more stuff. Tomorrow night, what's your odds on Rob Van Dam and Kane?
Rob, right now we're not going to put that up because I can't see any way that RVD will win that match.
Well, there you go.
I mean, what we try to do, Dave, is put up the matches that are basically pick them to basically where we don't want the obvious matches up there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like during WrestleMania, we had a lot of people asking for Hulk Hogan or Captain America. It was Hulk Hogan on versus Vince McMahon. We didn't put that match up because everybody know that there's no way the Hulkster was going to job out to Vince.
In the arm wrestling match, he did though.
Yeah, that he did. But what we try to do is
in a rematch, he probably might.
Now he would.
Yeah.
But what we try to do is put.
What are your odds going to be for Brock Lesnar and Vince McMahon in a couple of weeks?
Oh God, is that match actually going to happen?
I think in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Are they going to do it? Is it going to be on a SmackDown show or a
SmackDown? I think.
Oh, how could Vince win that match?
Actually, you're right. He's not going to win that match.
No.
But let's go through. Are you doing odds for Pride or K1 or UFC?
We have somebody that does them for UFC and all those the martial arts matches in UFC. They have those up there.
Okay, but nothing for Bob Sapp and Chemo in Vegas.
I don't know if they have that up there next. I actually don't do those odds.
Okay. Well.
I wouldn't be able to tell you on that.
Okay, and for the Vengeance pay-per-view, the three-way with Brock Lesnar, Big Show, and Kurt Angle.
Right now, we're looking at the Big Show. He'll be plus 500. And,
his weight. That's good.
Yeah, that's about it. And Lesnar will be the favorite at minus 125, and Angle will be minus 175.
Okay, and Sable and Stephanie McMahon.
That will be a pick-em match.
Okay, and Benjamin and Haas against Mysterio and Kidman.
We're looking at Benjamin and Haas minus 140, Mysterio and Billy plus 110, with a special prop in there. Which wrestler will get hit with the 619 first?
Okay.
Haas or Benjamin?
Or Kidman.
Yeah, we never know. We always put a deal in there.
Okay. Chris, I want to thank you very much.
All right, the pleasure was all mine.
Okay, we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome. And we are going to take a call, and then we're going to get Larry Matisic and Mike Tenay up and start with the Hall of Fame part of the show. We're going to go to Ed in San Antonio. Ed, what's happening?
Hey, guys. What I want to talk about is last week we touched a little bit on the Bruiser Brody murder in regards to the Invader. And the question I want to ask of you today is...
that may come up again today.
I heard a Bobby Jagger's interview on Wrestling Classics where he said that the reason that the incident happened was involving Brody not wanting to pay his taxes, and I was wondering if that was the true story.
No.
No, it wasn't?
No, not at all. I mean, no.
Well, he said it was like taxes and jealousy, and
there was jealousy there, yeah, but no. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about money, and I don't think that money had anything to do with it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the question I have in regards to the Hall of Fame is, I've never seen an actual list of everybody who's in there, but I know you have a non-wrestling category.
Not so much a non-wrestling category, but there are guys that are on the ballot, and like this year, it's Jesse Ventura, Don Owen, and Paul Heyman, that you're supposed to judge them not on what they've done as wrestlers, but they're elected to the same Hall of Fame. It's not like there's a non-wrestling category.
Okay. Well, the person I'm curious about, I don't think he would be in there, but I think he could actually have a strong case for, and that would be Bill Apter.
It's been discussed.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's been discussed. It's been discussed before. Bill Apter's name, yeah.
The reason I say Bill Apter is because when I was a kid, watching I mainly got the Texas wrestling and I got Georgia, but I would always buy the Apter mag, so I always knew pretty much everybody in the different territories. So when someone came in, I knew who they were. And I've heard you talk about like how the Sheik went to California and no one should have known who he was, but he was over. And I think like a lot of stuff like that had to do with Bill Apter. I really thought.
Well, Bill Apter made Lex Luger, so that should disqualify him right there. But I'm just to me, okay. The thing with Bill Apter is that Mexico has their equivalent, and Japan has many equivalents, and I don't know that Bill Apter was better at that than them. If you know what I'm saying. Yeah, actually, that's kind of my thoughts on. I don't see it. I wouldn't vote for Bill Apter in the Hall of Fame. And Bill Apter's a friend of mine, but I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
It's just my own thought. But people have brought the name up.
Okay, I have like one more question. I know you said you might have Conan on later. I remember when he did Ring of Honor, he was treated pretty badly by the fans.
Yeah, Jeff Hardy got that one last night.
Yeah, I read that, and I was curious. Is that just something that when any big star gets fired, it comes down that they're just going to be treated like that out of contempt because they were WWF, or do you think, or what's your thoughts on that? Because it's usually a good crowd, they're usually real respectful, and then it's like you get a former big time star, and
I think that in both cases, clearly the people were waiting to do it, for whatever reason. I think that, it's funny, Abdul the Butcher worked there, and he didn't get it. And why Conan got it and Jeff Hardy got it and Abdullah didn't get it or Dusty Rhodes didn't get it. Maybe because they're older and is the only thing I can come up with. Whereas Jeff drew a lot of girls and maybe the guys that were there resented that, and Conan, I don't know. But I mean, I know I watched the match where Conan got booed, and I mean, there was a first spot, and I mean, they didn't boo him coming out at all. But the first spot that was missed, which was not his fault, but it was a missed spot, they were all on him, and they were on him from then till the rest. Now, with Jeff Hardy, they were on him from the minute he came out. They didn't wait for him to miss a spot, so they were really on him even worse in some ways. So, but I don't know. I wasn't at the show, so I'm only, it's only kind of a lot of secondhand reports of what happened, really. And I haven't seen a video, obviously, of last night.
Okay, well, thanks for taking my call, guys.
Okay, we've got, now, who do we have here? I know that we have Mike Tenay up. Is that correct?
I'm here.
You're here. Okay, is Larry Matisic here?
I'm here. How you doing, Dave? How you doing, Mike? Doing great, Larry.
Doing good.
I just want to say thanks for spoiling my Sunday, and I don't mean by guesting on this radio show. I was just going to spend a nice leisurely day, go to the casino, bet a few baseball games, and then...
Hey, you could bet on wrestling now.
Talk about this Hall of Fame tonight, and I've spent 2 hours trying to put together my ballot. You add names, you subtract names, you consider history, you consider so many different aspects, but I do have to admit that it makes for awfully fascinating conversation.
Yeah, I expect, when you and I talked earlier today, I realized that we're going to have a heck of a show because there's so much to talk about and so many different perspectives and so many things. There's two things I wanted to ask you about, Mike, because since we talked about this, actually, or you talked about it, and I didn't want you to tell me, but there were two things. For one I want to ask you about, and this has nothing to do with the Hall of Fame, but since we have not talked to you on this show since Zane Bresloff passed away, and I know that you have very strong feelings about the coverage and lack thereof of Zane Bresloff and what that says about the wrestling media.
Yeah, I did, and it's something that I even mentioned in one of my columns at nwatna.com, and that is that I just thought that the lack of attention that was given to Zane, especially not only just in terms of the obit in covering what he had accomplished in his wrestling days, but even in the updates on how he was doing was really there was really no coverage at all outside of what I read on the WrestlingObserver.com, and I just thought that it just spoke volumes as to how little that the people that consider themselves journalists in the wrestling business these days, be it internet or otherwise, really understand about the business and how important certain people like Zane Bresloff can be. Just because they work behind the scenes, just because you don't hear them on this radio show or you don't see them on a TV program every week, doesn't diminish how important they were to the overall success of a company. And I think that during the glory days of WCW, you could make an argument that Zane would be one of the top 2 or 3 most important people in establishing WCW and in bringing it to the top when we did have that great run a couple of years back. And I just felt that he really didn't get he really didn't get what he deserved in terms of that kind of historical notes by everybody that, and in some instances from certain websites and certain newsletters that didn't write anything about it at all. Just, I don't know, just sort of left a bad taste in my mouth.
Okay.
Doesn't surprise me at all. That's the history of the wrestling business, Mike. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that don't get any credit. And I'm going back a million years, but I remember Sam Muchnick telling me in St. Louis many years that Toots Mondt was the real power in New York.
Yeah.
And, you know, behind the scenes, but how many people really knew that Toots Mondt was the guy doing the maneuvering and the manipulating and all that stuff that Vince McMahon Sr. got credit for?
Right. Of course, that was a completely different era, Larry, when there was hardly any knowledge about what went on behind the scenes. And I just think that it's kind of funny and ironic that so many years later, when everybody thinks that they really know everything about what makes the business go, how few people actually maybe really do.
Well, and Dave and I have talked about this, too. How many people really do know, Dave?
I don't know, but
not as many as they think they are, and not
that's true.
Everybody knows.
That's true. The other thing,
nothing to do with anything. Go to the Hall of Fame.
Okay, well we're actually going to have to go to a break in just a second before we kick this off. In fact, we'll go to the break right now and we'll talk to Mike about another thing. We'll all bat around, including Brian. We'll start going through names and also talk about. Mike had some observations on why it is so difficult for current wrestlers as compared to wrestlers of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So we'll talk about that right after this. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. And our guests for the remainder of the show, we've got Mike Tenay, and we all, of course, an announcer from NWA TNA, and Larry Matisic, former St. Louis announcer and wrestling fan going back.
Way too many years, but more than 40 years, and they're probably the 2 best people I could come up with. In fact, not even probably, they are the 2 best people I could come up with for perspective, long-term perspective, short-term perspective, and international perspective as far as the Hall of Fame. Larry Matisic, probably when it comes to certainly the period in the 70s and 80s, I mean, in the middle of everything, and I know I talked to him about a couple of the guys, including Don Owens, which we'll talk about a little later on. What I want to do is... I guess since we're running out of time in this hour, before we start with the guys, I guess we'll do that right after the hourly break. But Mike, again, you said that you wanted to talk about your thoughts on why it is so difficult for the guys, current wrestlers and guys from the 90s to get in.
It almost seems as if there's an air of negativity that is directed towards the wrestlers of the era of the 90s and beyond. And I guess initially just a couple of thoughts that came into my mind. Wrestlers from the so-called golden era, the 60s and the 70s, I think that in your mind and in your memory, things from maybe your childhood or your younger days are always larger than life. They're always going to be better in your mind than they really were. So I think that's certainly one thing that plays into an advantage of someone that you maybe saw when you were a youngster as opposed to today's era of wrestler. I think maybe even more importantly is the fact that because of the knowledge that has been received from the Internet, or because of the perceived knowledge from the Internet, that people that vote often will judge the character of a wrestler more today because simply they know so much more about that individual. For example, you have Farmer Burns in the Hall of Fame, but for all we know, Farmer Burns may have been incredibly difficult to deal with, may have...
I bet he was.
outside the ring, and may have been, a person that, that, again, and we're talking about, the one that just pops into my mind, obviously, would be Shawn Michaels, and I think in future years, I think he's going to be coming up in another year, would be Triple H.
Yeah, well, there's...
To get just painted with that negative brush because of that, and I think also, it's just so much more of a sophisticated fan. The in-ring especially is just incredibly so much more under a microscope these days than in any other era. So I think maybe it's just a combination of all those factors that play into making it more difficult today to get into the Hall of Fame.
Well, one thing that I do want to mention is as far as United States guys from the 90s, I mean, there are very, very few that are in as compared, not even close compared to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, which is something that we'll talk about as we come back. Anyway, we're going to go to our hourly break. We're going to start going through the candidates right after the news. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of the Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on!
Okay, we're back with the second hour here on Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We're here with Brian Alvarez, of course, of Figure 4 Weekly, Mike Tenay, and Larry Matisic, longtime wrestling announcer, booker, promoter. He's pretty much many, many different things for many, many different years in pro wrestling. One of the things I want to mention is you guys can call up at 1-800-878-PLAY, and it's after we talk about different candidates. If you have any kind of feedback you want to throw in, you can call in and talk to all of us. We're going to start. What we should do is, I just want to also make mention that Larry Matisic, Mike Tenay, myself, and Brian, none of the four of us have voted. We have until August 1st to vote. And actually, there's a couple of ones that I'm kind of on the borderline. One that I decided on the car ride up. And I know Mike's been like that, and Larry, I know has been like that. And I don't know where Brian's at because me and him have not talked about the Hall of Fame, I think, hardly at all, with the exception of Shawn Michaels, which we've talked about for a year.
Yes.
Anyway, we're going to start. What I'll do is, I guess to make it easy, we'll start with Brian, we'll go to Larry, and then Mike, and in that order. And I'll give a candidate and just go with yes, no, and your feelings towards the candidate, and then we'll discuss from there if they're ones that we have disagreements on or if they need more discussion. Some of them are not going to have a lot of discussion, and some will probably have a lot. So anyway, we'll start with Arn Anderson. Brian, you go first.
I would say no.
Okay, Larry.
No, good performer, solid guy, but no, not a Hall of Famer.
Mike Tenay.
Tremendous on the mic, solid as hell in the ring, never a draw on his own. I'm going to say no.
Okay, and I'm going to agree with that, and that's about as far as we need to go. Bob Backlund, Brian.
What about Atlantis?
We're going to do those with Conan later.
Wait for Conan, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure because I would have to go back and read the article you wrote about Bob Backlund in Madison Square Garden because... apparently he was a much stronger draw than I had always been led to believe, but I'd say borderline right now, but probably no.
Okay. Larry.
Okay, I'm going to go yes on Backlund. At the time when he went up there, he was a huge deal, and he did exactly what he was asked to do for the WWF, which was draw money and provide an all-American face and a different look to the championship. He did what he was supposed to do. He did it for a fairly long time, and again, I come from more the promotion side of it. He drew money. Drawing money counts. So I'd say yes.
Mike.
Yeah, with each of these individuals, I always try to think in my mind of pluses and minuses, and I think I come up with more positives on Backlund. You think about the era of the late 70s into the mid-80s, certainly one of the biggest stars in the world, ability to draw the huge crowds at the Garden. I don't think really given enough credit, both in terms of the longevity that he had there, and the fact that he really wasn't an ethnic champ that was created for a particular audience. Downsides, not necessarily a great worker. The comedy comeback hurts him, but I'm still going to say yes to Bob Backlund.
Okay, I'm going to say yes to Bob Backlund as well. With the thing is that what really does hurt is that most of your champions, after you're an ex-champion, you remain like a big star in the industry and a big player, like Harley Race and Dory Funk Jr. and Jack Briscoe and all of them. And Bob, really, after he lost the title, he had a pretty much nondescript rest of his career, and I think that hurts him a lot. But still, for those 6 years, he was one of the 5 biggest stars in the world. He did draw. It was a very strong period for wrestling. And, yes. So, okay, we're going to go ahead to a break right now. We're going to come back and talk about people like Carlos Colon, Chris Benoit, Masahiro Chono, and Ultimo Dragon right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. Our guest this week, Mike Tenay, announcer for NWA TNA, and they have, of course, pay-per-views every single Wednesday night. They're going to be up this coming Wednesday, and with AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown. 2 out of 3 matches. They're going to do a match where in one fall it has to be by pin, one fall has to be by submission, and third fall, if needed, will be a ladder match. That's the main event. And, of course, Larry Matisic, who's been around wrestling for his entire adult life, for more years.
22 years.
For how many years?
Oh, well. I'm just going along with you, David. It's all right. Go ahead.
Okay, for longer than Mike or me, by far.
I remember Kenji Shibuya, but so does Mike.
And so absolutely. I started watching in 62, Larry, but I think you probably beat me by a couple of years.
I started watching, actually, 59, where it sticks in my brain, but I can remember Best Box and Texas Wrestling from the mid-50s.
So there you go. Kenshi Shibuya was on, probably the first TVs that I ever saw, too, in 71 in San Francisco, or 70.
But he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame.
No, he does not. Yeah, he lives out here, too. But, yeah, no, not in the Hall of Fame. Now, the next one, this is one of the most controversial picks for a lot of reasons. Carlos Colon, and I guess we'll go with Brian first.
I think that I would argue that he's too local, but at the same time, to run a promotion for as long as he has to count for something.
Okay. Does that mean that you're considering it, or you don't know yet?
I would vote yes.
Okay. Larry.
Okay, I'll vote no. I'll admit a certain amount of prejudices because I was really tight with Bruiser Brody, and what happened down there made a difference. Certain agreement there with what Brian said about running promotion for a long time, but by that standard, Tony Costa from South Broadway Athletic Club in St. Louis should be in because he's run a promotion there for 30 years. But
this was a promotion that had some serious success for a while there.
I might be too close. I just don't see him as a Hall of Famer, though.
Okay.
I'm going to say it's longevity, but also a top draw in his area, and it's a credential that I think it's as strong as almost anybody in history. You look at 25-plus years, a huge TV star in Puerto Rico, a tremendous drawing card. If we are going to put in a conduct clause in the Hall of Fame, then I guess you can make an argument against Carlos Colon. I'm going to say yes, but then again, I would also vote for Pete Rose.
Okay.
I would too.
Rose. I don't think he's as strong as Pete Rose, as far as that goes.
No, I just meant on the conduct.
Oh, no, I know what you're saying. I go back and forth. I mean, I will readily admit that if it were not for the death and the murder of Bruiser Brody, that I think I would have voted for him. And I do think that makes a difference, and I can't, I know Mike and I have talked about this.
Yeah, I have a difficult time taking him out because of that, simply because if we're going to put everybody on equal footing and you have people from 100 years ago in the Hall of Fame, we can't really know as much about those individuals and behind-the-scenes activities.
Oh, we don't. But at the same time, if somebody was involved in a murder cover-up, and I'm not saying that others haven't been, because I bet you somebody has, but certainly not of someone as well-known as Bruiser Brody, and also just the whole Invader situation of the fact that they used their TV to get him back over to try to taint the trial, that just everything that went down. Then he came back, and then Invader came back as Booker, which was his company, and that was under his watch and his decision. I got to vote no because of that. To me, that makes a difference. So, anyway, let's go with Chris Benoit, who I presume is Brian's one of his strongest picks, right?
I would say so. I would vote yes. If for nothing else, just being as great a worker as he is, and having worked the Japanese style, the American style, Mexico, all over the world.
Europe.
And I think that, you know, a lot of people will say Chris Benoit's never been like a singles headline or anything like that. And I would say that that is more the fault of the people who have had the ability to book Chris Benoit in that position and didn't than anything that he has done.
Interesting. Larry?
Okay, I'll sit with undecided on Benoit. Boy, believe me, I go back and forth on him and Brian really just named most of the reasons. Wouldn't it have been so much easier if WCW, if the politics had been such that when he had the World Championship for 1 year, or 1 day rather, could have kept it and we could have seen what had happened with him. So I'd say undecided. If not this year, I'll probably end up going with him before it's all said and done because he is an incredible performer.
This one is going to be a strong yes for me on Chris Benoit, not only the best worker of the past decade plus, but more importantly, as you guys have mentioned, the ability to be so good in so many different styles. Yes, you can make the argument that he didn't have a long run on top as the guy in any really group, I guess maybe outside of Mexico. But when you narrow it down to the three criteria, the drawing power, the in-ring performance, the historical significance, and if in any one of those three criteria, i.e. in-ring performance, that you can make a case for this individual being in the top 1 or 2% in that category, then I think you can make an argument that maybe because he didn't have the drawing power, but he was so good in the other, that he qualifies, and Chris Benoit is a yes for me.
You know, of all the guys on the ballot, to me, this is the one that I am most strong on yes. And the reason is because of all the guys I've watched, and I watched everybody from the last 30-plus years, I mean, there aren't – I mean, Mike and I were talking about this. I cannot come up with more than 2 or 3 guys that I would say are better anyway than Chris Benoit. And, I mean, once you say that, and they're all going to be in. So to me, I mean, you know, there are guys who, if you pick out their best match, were as good as Chris Benoit, or you pick out their best year were probably equal to Chris Benoit's best year. But we're talking about a guy now with, probably 14 great years in the ring. And again, yes, he does not have the drawing power, but I don't think that you need it when you're that good for that long. I mean, when you're in the ring, I mean, there's nobody in modern wrestling, with the exception of Flair and Kenny Kobashi, that I could put. Maybe Kawada. I don't know, but the point is, when I'm talking about that level, those guys are all automatic picks.
Nobody more consistent on a night-in, night-out basis than Benoit.
And
that's a good point, Mike. You may be swaying me. I like that night-in, night-out because that matters.
Okay, and the other thing, too, is that, you know, he's had some... With Chris Benoit, this is one of the things I was thinking about with him. You know, Brian and I, we remember Chris Benoit's bad matches because there's, like, almost none of them. You know what I'm saying? I said, we were sitting there, and it's like, we can remember, like, Kane and Billy Gunn, because they had bad matches with Chris Benoit, and, like, even Eddie Guerrero, who we're going to talk about later. I don't remember Eddie Guerrero's bad matches that much because he really had more than 2. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's almost like a Ric Flair where everybody remembers JYD because it's like, my God, you know, that was the one riddle he couldn't solve, you know?
So another thing about Benoit, because I thought of this when I was watching his match with Otani for the Cruiserweight title, and this was 96 or whatever, and he was taking moves that he could not take today because he has his neck fused. And the reason for that was because of all these crazy things he did back in the 90s or whatever. But today, even with a toned-down style, not killing himself, I don't look at it and go, God, he was so much better back then. I mean, he's just good at today.
He could do more moves then, but his matches are just as good.
Yeah,
you know, he's adapted like
from him when he was unable to do that stuff.
Yeah. He's adapted like Jushin Liger did to, you know, what they couldn't do, but he's adapted better than Jushin Liger in my opinion. As far as like, because his matches are just good. Jushin Liger, you know, I mean, he'll have some good matches here and there, but he absolutely is not what he once was. You know, and everybody will say that. Whereas with Benoit, you really don't. Okay, Masahiro Chono, which is an interesting pick, Brian.
I would vote yes.
Okay.
Not only I think it's mostly the drawing that I've seen him do, like this past year or the past couple of years. He's done very well, and also as a booker and as a performer. And I just think if he put it all together, I would have to say yes.
Okay, Larry.
Okay, I'm unfortunately a no on Chono, but then again, I'll admit perhaps I'm not as smart on the situation as I should be. He was a good worker. I know he went through a lot of injury problems and everything, but there's a lot of background with him. But unfortunately, I'm a no.
Okay.
On the fence on this one, but closer to a yes than a no. Primarily, Brian, you know, brought up about in the past year in what certainly has been a down time in Japan He's drawn some incredible crowds. In the ring, I can't give him a Hall of Fame ballot off his in the ring, but I just because of what he's accomplished, an overall historical standpoint, I'm leaning to a yes with Chono.
I'm leaning towards a yes, and the in-ring holds it back because in the ring if I think of before the injury, he could have been, but you can't vote on could have been. And after the injury, no, in the ring. But as far as, if you look at his standing, as far as his star power in Japan, and the fact that, on the big shows, when he was put on top, and granted they were with good people, but still he was in there, they drew a lot bigger than they would have drawn without him, and I'm going to go with the yes. But
himself of late, don't you feel that way?
What, helped himself in the last year?
Yes, in the last year.
The last year plus, absolutely. Because 2 years ago I would have said no. So yeah, I would say that. We're going to go hit a break right now. We're going to come back and talk about Ultimo Dragon, the Freebirds, Don Fry, Eddie Guerrero, Gran Hamada. Some very interesting names there, especially Eddie Guerrero and the Freebirds. Right after this, you're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. Our special guests this week, Mike Tenay and Larry Matisic. Of course, we're discussing the Hall of Fame. Also want to remind you, for the most updated wrestling news, you can always go to www.wrestlingobserver.com, and there's information on how to subscribe to both the Wrestling Observer newsletter that I put out every week and Figure 4 that Brian puts out every week. They're very entertaining reads and more inside info in those publications that you're going to find anywhere else. And anyway, got some real big issues coming up, including the Hall of Fame issue that we're talking about that's going to come up in about a month, and History of Wrestling early 90s coming out in about a week. And so anyway, got a lot of other stuff to talk about. We're going to go with Ultimo Dragon. Brian, you're next.
Yes. I would say because of his work rate and because of the fact that I watch Toriumon and I see what an incredible trainer he is, and how good the guys are that he has produced. And I really pray that he gets in this year, because I just know WWE is going to destroy him, and he will never get in if he doesn't make it in this year.
Wow, that was a lot of what I was going to say. But anyway, go ahead, Larry.
Oh, geez, I feel like a villain here if I say no. I mean, I recognize all the guys done, but on the other hand, I look at the ballot and I say, geez, I can't vote for 15 guys. I got to narrow it down. He's done a lot of stuff behind the scenes and everything. I recognize that in terms of training, which is certainly vital. But unfortunately, I'm a no right now.
I'm going to say yes with an exclamation point on Ultimo Dragon. Incredible in the ring. Certainly influenced the lucha style in Japan. Brian, you touched on it. Among the best, if not the best trainer in recent years, promoter in Japan and Mexico. Negatives, never a huge drawing card, and I think that's a great point about the negative connotation that may come with this WWE rub. But for me, Ultimo Dragon is an absolute yes.
I'm going to vote yes for Ultimo Dragon. And I think that one of the things that he doesn't get the credit for is I was there in 1990 and in Japan when this was going on. But Ultimo Dragon is the one who influenced all of the lucha. There were guys like Mil Mascaras, and Dos Caras who were very, very big connect in Japan. As far as Lucha Libre, but Ultimo Dragon went in there, and he was not supposed to be the big star of the promotion. Gran Hamada was supposed to be. And because of his charisma, Lucha Libre, while that company itself did not survive, it created an opening and led to Michinoku Pro, which did survive, and Osaka Pro, which still is around, and Toriumon, which he started and is running himself. And Toriumon has been around for 4 years. That's not enough. To where I'm like, okay, he's proven it. The training, that's a big one. The work, obviously, awesome worker. And I also think that if he doesn't get in this year, that it's going to be a lot like a lot of guys from Mexico that came to the United States that will not get in, that would have gotten in had they never come to the United States, but they never would have made the money had they not come to the United States. A very interesting thing, but I think that the WWE, it's going to cool him off completely. So, but I'm voting for him. Freebirds, Brian.
It's like just generically the Freebirds.
Well, Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Roberts, the Freebirds that were in Dallas and Atlanta and Mid-South, I think are the ones that everyone's talking about.
I'm going to actually pass on this one because part of me looks at a Wrestling Hall of Fame and doesn't see how the Fabulous Freebirds cannot be in there. But then again, I don't really have a really great reason to put them in there. So,
Larry was around in the middle of their heyday.
Yeah, they had a heck of a run. But again, if we're talking about longevity and just all sort of different things, Michael Hayes in particular brought a lot of the music stuff to it. Terry Gordy worked for me when I was in the Wrestling War in 1983. But still taking all that into account, as Brian said, it's a Hall of Fame. I just can't give him the vote. I have to say no.
Okay.
Wow, I was going to say borderline no, and after hearing Larry, who was going to, in effect, swing my vote as well, I guess I feel validated. We talk about the entrance music. They were big draws, but I think their opponents were actually bigger draws than they were.
Probably.
I think positioning of tag teams possibly hurts them, and certainly longevity, because, guys, really, what was it? Was it a strong 5 years?
I would say 79.
Okay.
To,
85.
As far as strong, 85. Oh, no, maybe 86, because then they went to Mid-South, although the Mid-South wasn't as successful the second time as the first.
Business was changing then so much.
Yeah. But, certainly, the one thing that, they did do record business in Mid-South with JYD, and then the Von Erichs Freebirds was one of the great feuds in wrestling history. And that's really what it is. It's, is that enough? And the fact that they did popularize the entrance music, they were copied a lot by a lot of people. They were very, very charismatic. I'm on the fence on this one. I would say I'm leaning towards yes, but I'm on the fence.
Dave, remind me last year. Didn't I vote for him last year? Now I'm saying this year I didn't. I'm not going to vote for him. I mean, so I'm on that fence too, but it's a no this year.
Okay, Don Fry.
I am borderline on this one, but I'm leaning towards yes. This past year has hurt him, but, up until that point, he had a hell of a fighting record. He wasn't beating nobodies. As a pro wrestler, he was good. I understand that he was in with Antonio Inoki, but still a hell of a draw in that retirement match. And he's been involved in some fights that till the day I die, I will never forget, and so I think I would vote yes.
Larry?
I pass. I don't feel I know quite enough. There's things about him that I do know that are really impressive as heck. But again, I get into that longevity thing, and it's tough, though, with the type of fighting he's done.
The thing is I don't think you can do when it comes to fighting. I don't, and for that matter, modern wrestling, to me, it's like, if we're, it's just something, because times change. I don't think that you can use longevity even as a factor when it comes to that, because you can't have it. It's almost like if you're judging, let's say a starting pitcher, modern starting pitcher who should be in the Hall of Fame, and someone comes up and just goes, well, look at, how many complete games he has compared to, Sandy Koufax, and it's just like, it's a different, you can't do that, because it's a different ballgame now.
Right, the specialists in today's sports era totally changed that.
Yeah, and real fighting and the style of pro wrestling that he did, which is a very brutal style of pro wrestling, is not going to let, he was on the phone, he was on the show here last week, about his body. He's not going to come back and you know what I mean? His neck, I listen to it, his neck is worse than Kurt Angle or Steve Austin. Think about that. And he wrestled Vader today. But that's another story. But anyway.
To fight again.
Yeah. And he may fight again. Well, Mike.
Yeah,
Mike and I have talked about Don Fry quite a bit today.
Right. Incredible mixed martial arts credentials. I think we could argue this one for the rest of the show. He made my next to last list, but he's not going to make my list this time.
I'm going to pick him because, if I look at just New Japan alone, no. If I look at New Japan with Pride, it's pretty darn close. If I throw in UFC, it's a yes. I think it's pretty clear that the Pride should count. I think it has to, or else we're really being ignorant of what pro wrestling in Japan is today. UFC is a very debatable one. But I think that when you look at his whole career, from the winning of that Ultimate to the, and he did draw big in Japan. He was the top foreigner. The top foreign's draw until SAP came along for several years, for probably a 5-year run. Sold out a couple of Tokyo Domes, holds a record at the Osaka Dome, and those are all for pro wrestling matches. Not a great worker pro wrestling-wise, but for the kind of worker he needed to be, he was pretty great. If you think about it, because he couldn't do the style, it wouldn't work. That's not what they wanted him for. And then going back to Pride and having those incredible matches with Ken Shamrock and Takayama and drawing and being on the big shows, and I got to go yes. Anybody else want to talk about that one? Mike, do you want to talk about that anymore?
I mean, as far as Don Fry goes, you know, we beat this one to death earlier today. It's one of those just very difficult things to try and put, like Larry said, the longevity standpoint. And again, you can't consider it because it's two totally different animals with the mixed martial arts and the pro wrestling. It certainly wouldn't upset me if he made it by any means, but I just don't have him on my list this year.
Okay, Eddie Guerrero.
Different Ed to the Hall of Fame, Dave. Have a little somehow a different part for MMA, and then.
Well, I don't think MMA, but when you're talking about Japan now and what it's turned into, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, some of those guys. I mean, certainly to me, Sakuraba has to go in. I mean, that would be almost a slam dunk, just because of what he's done. I mean, I'm not in favor of I don't know who else in MMA. I think that a lot is going to see. Time is going to tell if this is a fixture as pro wrestling or a fad. I'm thinking it might be a fixture, and if it's a fixture, he's one of the pioneers too. So anyway, Eddie Guerrero, Brian.
I think for the majority of Eddie's career, you would have to look at his work rate, and I just don't see him as being good enough strictly on that to go in. So perhaps at some point, but not this year.
Larry.
Same answers, Brian. I'd have to say no. A lot of respect for him. Golly, I just saw some of the tapes of his dad, of Chavo. Man, was Chavo good?
His father was Gory. Chavo was his
Gory, that's right. Good. Chavo would be the uncle.
Brother. No, Chavo is Chavo's Junior's dad.
I mean Chavo Senior. I mean the Chavo.
Chavo Senior is Eddie's brother.
I didn't realize that. Shows how dumb I was on that. Okay. Oh, well, anyhow. Eddie, no.
Okay. I certainly see the argument that people make when they talk about placing Eddie Guerrero with Dragon and Benoit. They say if you put Benoit and Dragon, then you have to put Eddie. And I sort of see that argument, but I think if you really look over his career, you'll find that Eddie has not been as consistently good on a night-in, night-out basis as those guys, whether it's the personal demons that he certainly looks like he's overcome in recent years, or whatever the factor would be. I would certainly anticipate a yes from me down the line in future years for Eddie Guerrero, but in 2003, it's a no.
I agree, and I think Eddie is arguably the best wrestler, and certainly one of the handful of best wrestlers in the world today. I do expect at some point I would probably vote for him, but I can't this year either. So I think we're all in agreement on that one. We're going to come back. We'll talk about Gran Hamada, Volkan, Owen Hart, Hiroshi Hase, Kurt Hennig, and more right after this. You'll listen to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly. We're here with Larry Matisick and Mike Tenay. We're talking about the Hall of Fame. We left off with Eddie Guerrero. We're going to go with Gran Hamada. Brian.
I think I voted for Gran Hamada last year, and I'm not sure if I will this year. I base that mostly on longevity and the fact that at 50, whatever he is today, 54 or something, he was still really good. And now I don't think that I consider that enough, and because I think that the way that things are going these days, you're going to be seeing a lot more guys in their 50s that are decent in the next...
Do you really think so?
Well, I mean, the guys that don't work the style that kill themselves.
I don't know that you're... I mean, we may. I don't know. I actually...
Who would that be besides Larry Zbyszko?
No, I just see that, 40 now is not what 40 was 20 years ago. And I would not...
Oh, because of drugs.
50 still going in another 10 or 15 years, so I would have to vote no.
Okay. Larry?
No, and I'll keep it short. Keep going.
Great worker, ability to adapt his style at his age to the times, absolutely amazing. Lack of charisma, lack of draw in big time, he's a no for me.
I've voted for him in the past, and I think what's hurting him, and I'm not going to vote for him either, and I think that, he's come close to making it on several years, is that he, by switching from Michinoku Pro to All Japan, he became a preliminary guy and not even an important preliminary guy, and I think that hurts him a lot, even though he's in his 50s and you look at the whole career. The one thing he's got going for him is I think very few wrestlers were that good for that long, but, yeah, does not have the charisma. And, I mean, while a great worker, I don't think he's the greatest worker I've ever seen or anything like that, so I guess I'm going to go with no. Volkan, Brian.
I would say just for being a pioneer in MMA, I would have to vote yes.
Okay.
Recognize that, but unfortunately I'll vote no because once again I'm trying to tighten my list, not to make it longer.
Okay.
I would agree. Certainly, I think his below-the-radar career, as far as U.S. fans are concerned, or U.S. people in the business, kills his chances. Incredible draw with rings, but he's not on my ballot this year.
He was awesome. And I think the fact that promotion died. But the best guy in that promotion was Kiyoshi Tamura, not Volkan. And, I don't see Kiyoshi Tamura ever making it either, although I would probably vote for him. I think leaning towards no. Owen Hart, Brian.
I would vote no. And it's too bad because had his career continued, I don't believe for a second that he would have retired. So I have no idea where his career would have taken him. And with the guys like Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit and everybody in WWE today, he could have had some awesome matches. And who knows what would have happened with him. But his career up to that point, I just don't see enough to get him into the Hall of Fame.
Unfortunately, I agree. No, we were cheated out of seeing his best years.
Yeah, incredibly innovative flyer early in his career. It's a no for me, but with a question, Dave. Do you think if Owen Hart had worked the majority of his career in Japan and continued along the path that he did in the early years of his career, that we would be talking about him in terms of being a Hall of Famer?
If he had stayed in Japan, I think he would have been stronger than had he gone to WWE, yes. But I would have to vote no. There's nothing... very good worker, obviously, but there's nothing that puts him over the top, that puts him from that makes him a Hall of Famer to me. Hiroshi Hase, Brian.
Purely for the professional wrestling aspect, I don't really see a whole lot that would sway my vote, so I would say no.
No also, Dave.
He was a yes for me last year. He's borderline, so I'm not positive. But I think when you combine the in-ring with the unselfishness behind the scenes and how many people that he made stars in Japan, I'm leaning to yes.
I'm on the border on this one. I need to think about it. I voted for him in the past. The fact that he left wrestling to become a politician and was a successful politician, I don't think should work against him. The fact that he's not a big star today, but he did a lot of things for a lot of guys, and then the key one I always think of is Scott Norton, who's horrible, and it took a lot of years before people in Japan realized how horrible he was because Hase always carried him, and Hase could carry anyone. Anyone. And that doesn't necessarily put you in a Hall of Fame, but when you talk about the assistant booker during one of the biggest successful periods in history, and the fact that he sacrificed his own career to make other people, it's pretty tough. Kurt Hennig, Brian.
It very much pains me to say this because he was one of my favorite wrestlers, but I would have to vote no.
Unfortunately, I also vote no. Good worker, good guy, but not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, love that objectivity, Brian. I'm in the same boat as pretty much everybody else. One of those guys that I would like to say yes, but I'm going to say no.
He was a great
worker
for 5 or so years. It's just not enough years.
Yep.
If he was a great worker for that same level for 15 years, I would say yes. I just don't think enough years. And then if you really talk about the last several years of his career, we all saw him. That was not a Hall of Fame wrestler.
No, it hurt him.
Yeah. Aja Kong.
I'm going to pass just because my knowledge of women's wrestling in Japan is pretty limited. But from what I do know, I would vote yes. But like I said, I don't know enough, so I'm just going to pass.
I also have to pass because I think my knowledge is also limited. But Dave, you probably explained before too the way the way balloting is set up. You do have people who would be more knowledgeable in various areas that might perhaps pick up us saying a no, or we just have to pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aja Kong, incredibly charismatic heel in the big era of the Japanese women's wrestling. Voted for her last year, but I don't have a place on the ballot yet this year for Aja Kong.
Really?
I haven't put it on. I haven't totally scratched her off, but I don't have her on.
I'm not 100% either way on her, but I'm certainly leaning towards yes. Pretty. The negative I almost think is that there's so many women in, and but at the same time,
she was a pretty darn big deal there at her peak. She really was. I am leaning towards yes. Shawn Michaels. Brian, we already know, but you want to give a quick one?
Is this to me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I've argued about this way too much. I have nothing more to say.
Larry.
Probably no yet, although I waver now and then, and I know the politics thing is different. I was actually kind of brought it home. One thing that kind of scared me, brought it home when you went through the ratings of what people had drawn as pay-per-view performers, and The Undertaker actually had drawn more money than Michaels, and I'm thinking, that kind of shakes me.
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels would be a yes for me. Obviously, a lot of controversy surrounds the pick. I'm going to try and take that as much as I can out of the equation, and even with that in the equation, he's still a yes because of, I don't know what it was, 4 years, 5 years as a main event singles wrestler, factoring in also a really strong tag team era when the Rockers were, there was a couple years the Rockers were the best tag team in the business. Shawn Michaels is a yes.
I go with Shawn Michaels, obviously, as a yes. I mean, it's a balancing act, and I mean, the thing to me is he's just too good not to be in, and he's one of the best I've seen, and I'll leave it with that. Midnight Express, Brian.
I would vote no.
Okay.
Also no.
Great in-ring tag team in their era, but I think once you separate Jim Cornette from the Midnight Express, and obviously Cornette is in, but I cannot put the Midnight Express in. That's a no.
I'm considering them because, again, since the Midnight Express, I have not seen a tag team that good, and so many of these tag teams that are around now copied, the double team stuff from them. I have not decided on that one yet. Moolah, Brian.
Nope.
Okay. Larry.
Nope.
No.
Well, then we're unanimous on that. Grill Monsoon.
No.
Another no.
Yeah, it's a no, and I think you mentioned last year about Monsoon possibly should be moved over to the other category because when you take into effect the announcing and the years and years behind the scenes work that he did, but Monsoon is a no for me.
Okay, here's Dick Murdoch, which is always a close one.
I'm kind of on the fence with Dick Murdoch. I would probably vote yes, both for in-ring work and influence as far as guys who obviously idolized Dick Murdoch growing up and became pro wrestlers, so I would probably vote yes.
Larry?
I'm also a yes. I kind of feel that he's comparable to a Wahoo McDaniel went in, and on a secondary issue, I saw two guys get great matches out of Dick the Bruiser at the end of his career. One was Ric Flair, and one was Dick Murdoch.
Wow, it's tough to vote against Larry Matisic on Dick Murdoch.
I know.
Don't worry about it, Mike.
It's always been funny, but I think for 10 years we've been talking about Dick Murdoch being the dividing line.
Yeah, he always is.
He always was that guy. I guess in my mind, I certainly remember how he had some incredible matches with guys that you'd say there's no way you can have a good match out of that guy, but then at the same time, I can certainly remember the nights that Dick Murdoch took off, and I'm going to say no. Sorry, Larry, but
okay,
damn, I respect your opinion so much on that one, too.
I saw him never take nights off in St. Louis, so I was fortunate that
that's true. He wasn't going to do that in front of Sam, was he?
I guess I'm going to go with no. He's a great wrestler, and he has a lot of respect, and it's almost a numbers game thing. Brian, I go with Yuji Nagata.
I would say no at this point, but I would not have any problem probably at some point in the future voting yes. But at this point, no.
No also, but down the road, good chance. You never know.
Yeah, it's a third vote for me that's a no. But again, Yuji Nagata, if you can put together similar numbers that he has done in terms of being on top in Japan in the last year plus, if he can do that for several more years, then I'd consider him.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's too early, but I certainly consider him as a guy down the line who could be, but not this year. He just needs a few more years. Rock and Roll Express.
I'm going to pass at this point.
Really?
Yeah, just for now.
Yeah.
I can see arguments both ways, and I'm just going to pass.
Larry?
I'll take a no on it. I mean, they did what they could do in their level. They were terrific performers, but I don't see them in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, incredibly influential as a babyface tag team for their era, and obviously how they've influenced tag teams and tag team matches from that point forward. But it's a no.
Okay, I agree. We're gonna hit a break. I'm gonna see if we can get as many of these next ones in because we're running low on time. But anyway, we'll be back. Maybe I'll have to pick just 3 or 4 of them. But we'll be back. Let's a few of the controversial ones or close ones right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter with Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly, Larry Matisic, and Mike Tenay. We've been talking about the Hall of Fame, and we are going to run out of time. We're not going to get to everyone, and unfortunately, there were several people that I wanted to discuss that we're not going to get to, but I'm going to pick a couple of names that we can talk about. Undertaker, Brian.
I have always voted no, but when I look at, we were just talking about this earlier, the number of guys from the 90s that are in the Hall of Fame from the U.S., it's like 3. And just looking at the longevity, the fact he's always pushed as a main eventer, I would almost sway my vote to yes.
Dave and I talked about this yesterday, and I'm on the borderline on The Undertaker. I'm probably leaning that way a little bit for almost the same reasons Brian said. I always gave credit to the gimmick, not to the man. Now he's kind of got a different gimmick. He has been there for a long time. That's hard to do today. The fact that 90s wrestlers haven't gotten in yet, well, I think they'll get in down the road. There's nothing that says you have to be in the Hall of Fame when you're 35. You get in when you're 45, you're still in the Hall of Fame. But I'm kind of leaning his way a little bit simply for the longevity, although it's not the strongest vote in the world.
Yeah, he was a yes for me last year, and Undertaker will be a yes for me this year for similar reasons that were just mentioned. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I would agree. Don Owens. Don Owen. Brian.
Strictly for longevity, I would almost say you would have to vote him in, just for having run a promotion for like 200 years, and the Portland territory, so many great workers came out of it. I would have to say yes.
Larry, who knew about Don Owen better than any of us. Really.
Okay, well, unfortunately, I'll say no. I mean, I appreciate the longevity, but when the wrestling upheaval came, nobody's really trying to push Oregon out. And the other thing, too, a lot of young wrestlers were sent to Don Owen by the Sam Muchnick, the Fritz Von Erichs, the Eddie Grahams of the world, hey, train him. And that's important. But I don't know that Don Owen is Sam Muchnick or Don Owen is Paul Bosch. And so, while I appreciate and respect everything he did for a lot of years, I can't put him in the Hall of Fame.
Mike.
Perfectly put, Larry. He was a survivor as far as a territory, but it was a territory that really didn't flourish on the non-performers list. He's a no, but Jesse Ventura is a yes from me.
Okay, we are out of time, and we may have to talk more about this in a couple of weeks. I'll try to get everyone together, and we'll also talk about the Luchadors, since we never got to them because we didn't finish the first list that we were going to get to. So anyway, I want to thank Larry. I want to thank Mike so much for joining us tonight. I knew this was going to go too quick, and it did, Brian. We'll see everybody in a couple weeks. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.